From the very beginning, I'd envisioned a beautiful beach wedding with my fiancé, Mark. We'd been together for 6 years, sharing countless memories by the ocean, our favorite place to unwind. Planning this day was something I took seriously. After all, it was a once-in-a-lifetime celebration. For 5 years, I saved diligently, setting aside every penny I could from my job in advertising to make it possible. Our dream was a gorgeous seaside ceremony, followed by a reception at a luxury hotel overlooking the waves. But that dream began to shatter when my family intervened. A few months before the wedding, my mother called, sounding panicked. She explained that my father was sick and they needed help covering his medical bills. The doctors had recommended an imported drug, she claimed, something that wasn't covered by their insurance. I was shocked but immediately concerned. I couldn't refuse my family in a crisis, especially not for something so serious. She requested $115,000, a staggering amount that would put a dent in our wedding fund but could be life-saving for my father. Without hesitation, I transferred the money, assuming it would go toward my dad's recovery. Soon after, though, I noticed something strange. When I visited, my father was in bed, but he didn't look gravely ill. My mother brushed off my questions about his condition, always finding a reason to avoid sharing his medical reports or moving him to the hospital. She'd say it wasn't necessary, or that he was better off resting at home. After several evasive responses from my mother, I started to worry that something wasn't right. Then, during conversation with my younger brother, Tom, he mentioned he was on his honeymoon in Europe, a surprise to me because I hadn't heard a thing about it. When I asked him about the trip, he revealed that our parents had funded it, covering everything from flights to lavish stays at high-end hotels. That information stunned me. How could they afford this extravagant honeymoon if they couldn't cover my dad's medical expenses? I pressed Tom for more details, and he told me the trip was costing around $125,000, all on our parents' dime. As he kept talking, I realized the truth. The money I'd given my parents for my father's supposed treatment was being used to fund Tom's honeymoon. My stomach sank. They had lied to me, exploiting my concern for my father to take away my hard-earned savings for their golden child. With my suspicions confirmed, I confronted my parents. At first, they tried to dodge my accusations, but eventually, they admitted it. My mother explained they'd used the money for Tom because he was struggling and needed a break. They justified their deception by saying I was young and financially stable and could earn the money back over time. They'd convinced themselves that taking my savings was somehow a necessary sacrifice for Tom's happiness. I was speechless. For years, I'd sacrificed my own desires to make this wedding possible, believing in a dream that was now slipping away. I'd been lied to, betrayed by the very people who were supposed to support me. The more they explained, the angrier I became. They insisted they would eventually pay me back, but that timeline stretched years into the future. I'd poured my heart into planning this day, and they'd stolen it without a second thought. After that day, I cut contact with my family. Mark and I talked long into the night, brainstorming ways to salvage our wedding. His family was incredibly supportive, and his aunt graciously offered us her farmhouse as an alternative venue. It wasn't the beach, but it was beautiful in its own way, a charming, rustic space surrounded by wildflowers and open fields. The idea grew on me. We decided to forego the luxurious hotel and instead have an intimate ceremony with just a few close friends and family members. With each new decision, I felt my anger giving way to something else, a sense of peace, perhaps, and the understanding that a wedding is more about the people who love and support you than the grandeur of the venue. The day of the wedding was perfect. Surrounded by a select group of loved ones, I walked down the aisle to Mark, who looked at me with nothing but love and admiration. For a brief moment, I forgot all the pain my parents had caused and embraced the happiness of marrying the man I loved. His family, my true family, made the day everything I could have wanted, even without the extravagant details. The wedding was filled with laughter, warmth, and genuine joy. We took photos in the golden light of the evening, and I found myself grateful for the simplicity and the love that filled the space. It was more beautiful than I could have imagined, and I realized that I hadn't lost my dream. I'd found something even more meaningful. And our commitment to each other, not about having the most extravagant ceremony or impressing anyone else. It turned out that the more we scaled down, the more intimate and meaningful the event became. As the day of the wedding approached, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief that we had made the decision to go ahead with this secret ceremony. I had my closest friends and family members around, and the venue, though not the beach, had a warmth and charm that I hadn't expected. My husband and I had agreed that we would focus on what truly mattered, our love and the start of our future together. Still, in the back of my mind, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal from my parents and my brother. They had all crossed a line, and even though I was trying to move forward, a part of me wanted to make them realize how badly they had hurt me. I couldn't stop thinking about the money they had taken from me, money that I had worked so hard to save up for my own special day. It felt like I had been robbed, and while I knew it wasn't the kind of situation that warranted a dramatic confrontation, I still felt anger. The whole thing had been a setup, a lie to fund my brother's honeymoon at my expense. When I had been saving for 5 years, scrimping and planning, they had blown my money away to give him a lavish trip. The night before the wedding, my husband and I sat down and talked about everything. He wanted me to consider forgiving my family, but he understood why I was angry. He knew how much the wedding meant to me and how much I had put into it, only for them to take it all away for a honeymoon that didn't even make sense. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the lack of respect for me as a person, for my dreams. He said we'd get through it together, that this day was for us and not for anyone else. On the day of the wedding, everything went smoothly. The ceremony at the farmhouse was beautiful. My husband and I exchanged vows, promising to love and support each other through thick and thin. It was simple, but every word felt real. We had a small reception afterward, with some close family and friends. My husband's aunt, whose property we used for the ceremony, was so kind to us, and we couldn't have asked for a better venue under the circumstances. The hardest part, of course, was not having my parents there. They had been the ones to teach me how to value family, but they had shown me, in the most painful way, that family loyalty doesn't always go both ways. My parents had chosen to prioritize my brother's wants over my needs, and that was something I couldn't ignore. After the wedding, I didn't feel the need to make any grand gestures to prove a point. I didn't have to humiliate them or make them feel bad. The silence and the absence of their support spoke louder than any words could have. I knew I had made the right decision by keeping them out of my special day. In the months that followed, I focused on rebuilding my relationship with my husband, adjusting to married life, and healing from the wounds that my family had inflicted. Eventually, my parents tried to reach out, sending a message asking if we could talk. But by that time, I had already come to terms with the fact that I could not let them manipulate me anymore. I'm not going to pretend it was easy to cut them off or to stand up for myself, but I knew that if I didn't, I would always feel like a second-class citizen in my own family. My happiness wasn't something they could buy or control. Looking back, I realized that in some ways my wedding day turned out to be even more meaningful than I could have imagined. It wasn't the wedding I had initially planned, but it was the wedding I needed. It was a reminder that love, commitment, and loyalty don't always come from the people you expect. Sometimes, the most important thing you can do for yourself is to stop allowing others to take advantage of you, no matter who they are. My wedding was beautiful, yes, but it was also a turning point for me. It was a lesson in standing up for what I deserved, and in recognizing that no one could ever take away my value or my dreams, no matter what they did or how hard they tried to make me feel small. And as for my parents and my brother, they've since tried to make amends, but I've remained firm. I've realized that their actions spoke louder than any apology could. I don't need them to accept my life choices or validate my decisions. I just need them to respect them. And until they can do that, I'm not willing to open the door for them to hurt me again. Life has moved on, and I've found peace. My husband and I are building a future together, one that doesn't depend on the approval or the forgiveness of anyone who has shown me nothing but disrespect. I've learned that family doesn't always have to be blood, and that the ones who truly care about you'll never make you feel less than. And as for the money they took from me, well, it's gone. But the love and support I get from my husband, from the people who truly care about me, is worth more than all the money in the world. That's something my family will never be able to take away.